She doesn't fall because you said the right thing. She falls because you were the right thing, consistently, quietly, without fanfare. And that's the secret most men never uncover. Deep attraction isn't sparked by moments. It's built by momentum, by the slow, steady accumulation of presence. By the way you show up day after day, unchanged by her mood, unshaken by her silence, unaffected by her tests. Because, make no mistake, she's testing you, not out of cruelty, but out of survival. She's been let down before. She's given her attention to men who started strong and faded fast, men who crumbled under pressure, men who turned cold when she finally opened up. So she watches, she waits. She measures your energy against your words. And the man who passes? Not the one who promises loyalty, the one who lives it. Without being asked, without needing credit, without expecting anything in return. That's the man she can't ignore. Not because he's perfect, but because he's real. And reality, when it's steady, becomes irresistible. Most men think they need to do more, text more, call more, prove more, but the truth is the less you react, the more she feels. The less you chase, the deeper she invests. Because emotional restraint creates space for her mind to wander toward you, to wonder about you, to want you. And that space? That's where desire grows. Not in the flood of attention, but in the quiet absence of it. When you don't reply immediately. When you don't beg for a response, when you live your life with purpose while she watches from the edge, wondering why you're not chasing her like the others did, that's when her curiosity turns to respect, when her doubt turns to admiration, when her guarded heart begins to lean forward, just slightly, towards something it hasn't felt in years, trust. And trust isn't given to the man who says, "I'm different." It's given to the one who proves it, through silence, through action, through the way he handles himself when she's not even looking. Because the real test isn't how you treat her when you're trying to win her. It's how you treat yourself when you think no one cares. Do you still wake up early? Do you still train your body? Do you still speak with integrity when no one's around to praise you? That's where your value is decided. Not in what you do for her, but in what you do for you. And when she sees that, when she witnesses a man who doesn't need her to stay disciplined, who doesn't require her attention to feel alive, something shifts inside her. Not fear, not guilt, relief. The relief of finally meeting someone who isn't looking to take from her, but to stand beside her. A man who carries his own weight, who doesn't expect her to fix his loneliness, fill his emptiness, or validate his existence. That man, rare, grounded, complete, is the one she's been waiting for, not because he's flawless, but because he's whole. And wholeness is magnetic. It doesn't shout, it doesn't beg. It simply exists, and in its quiet strength it draws her in, not with force, but with gravity. This isn't about manipulation, it's about evolution. It's about becoming so rooted in your truth that you stop seeking approval and start radiating certainty. And when you reach that level, not as a performance, but as a way of life, you stop trying to attract love. You start embodying it. Not as a feeling, but as a state of being. And in that state, she doesn't just see a partner, she sees a force. A man who doesn't need her to be strong, because he already is. And that's the ultimate invitation. Not to chase you, but to join you. You don't become the man she can't ignore by changing your words. You become him by changing your silence, by learning what to hold back, by understanding that the most powerful thing you can do in a conversation isn't speak, it's pause. That fraction of a second where you don't rush to respond, where you let the moment breathe, where you allow the weight of your presence to settle, that's where real influence begins. Most men fear silence like it's failure. They fill it with jokes, with stories, with nervous energy, anything to avoid the discomfort of stillness. But you lean into it. You wear it like armor. Because you know something they don't, silence isn't empty. It's full of power, full of presence, full of unspoken strength. And when she speaks and you don't immediately answer, when you look at her, not with hunger, not with need, but with calm focus, she feels it, not rejection, not disinterest, depth. She feels the weight of a man who isn't scrambling for approval, who isn't performing, who isn't trying to win. And in that moment, her mind does something remarkable. It starts to lean in, not because you gave her attention, but because you withheld it. Psychology confirms this. Uncertainty triggers pursuit. The brain doesn't chase what it can easily have. It chases what it might lose, what it can't quite understand, what doesn't react the way it expects. And when you break the pattern, when you respond slower, speak less, move with intention instead of reaction, you become unpredictable, not in a chaotic way, in a controlled way. And that's what captures her attention. Not your charm, not your looks, not your status, your energy, the way you occupy space without apology, the way you don't shrink when she tests you, the way you stay calm when she pulls away. Because she will pull away, not to hurt you, but to see if you'll chase, to see if you're real, to see if your confidence is built on a foundation or just a performance. And most men fail this test. They panic, they text more, they try harder, or they beg with their silence, with their timing, with their desperation disguised as patience. But you don't flinch, you don't react. You stay grounded. You keep living your life. You keep moving forward, whether she's with you or not. And that's when the shift happens. Not because you did something dramatic, but because you did nothing at all. You stayed. You remained. You proved, without saying a word, that your value isn't tied to her attention. And when a stoic woman sees that, when she truly witnesses a man who doesn't need her to feel complete, she doesn't just admire you, she resonates with you. Because she spent her life being the strong one, the one who holds it together, the one who doesn't break. And finally, she sees someone who doesn't need her to fix anything. Someone who stands on his own. Someone who isn't asking her to carry his emotional weight. That man, rare, steady, unshakable, is not just attractive, he's necessary. He's the answer to a quiet longing she's never spoken aloud. I want to be seen, not needed. And when you become that man, when your silence speaks louder than your words, when your presence outweighs your effort, when your consistency becomes your signature, you stop chasing connection, you start embodying it. And in that embodiment, she doesn't just fall for you, she aligns with you. Not out of loneliness, not out of impulse, but out of recognition. Recognition that you are not just another man. You are a standard. And once she's felt what that's like, there's no returning to less. You don't earn her attention by reaching for it. You earn it by standing still, by not reaching at all. Most men treat attraction like a transaction. Give a compliment, get a smile, show interest, expect reciprocation. But that's not how deep connection works. That's not how a woman with depth responds. She doesn't want balance. She wants weight. She wants to feel the presence of a man whose value isn't up for negotiation. A man who doesn't barter his energy for her approval. A man who, when she pulls back, doesn't panic. He breathes deeper. Who, when she goes silent, doesn't flood her inbox. He closes his phone and lifts weights. That's the man who stays in her mind. Not because he's playing games, but because he's living a life that doesn't revolve around her. And that's the ultimate signal. I am whole. I am occupied. I am not waiting. Because neediness repels, wholeness attracts. And the more complete you become within yourself, the more magnetic you become to the woman who's tired of carrying everyone else's emotional weight. She's not looking for another project. She's not looking for someone to fix, to motivate, to save. She's looking for someone to match. Someone whose fire doesn't depend on her oxygen. Someone who burns on his own. And when she sees that, when she witnesses a man who is disciplined without being asked, who speaks with clarity without raising his voice, who moves through life with purpose, even when she's not watching, she doesn't just feel attraction, she feels relief. The deep, quiet relief of finally meeting someone who isn't asking her to be the strong one. For once she can lean, not because she's weak, but because she's human. And you've become the kind of man she can trust with that vulnerability. Not because you demanded it, but because you earned it through consistency, through silence, through the way you hold your ground when everything in her wants to test you. Most men fail not because they're unattractive, but because they're inconsistent. They show up strong one day and needy the next. They pull close, then disappear. They act unbothered, then text at 2 a.m. But you're different. You're steady. Your energy doesn't spike when she responds. It doesn't crash when she doesn't. You remain, you continue, you live your life with the same intensity, whether she's present or not. And that consistency, quiet, unshakable, relentless, becomes your greatest seduction. Not your words, not your looks, your reliability. Because a stoic woman doesn't fall for excitement, she falls for safety. For the man who proves, over time, that he won't abandon her when things get real, that he won't punish her with silence when she sets a boundary, that he won't confuse passion with control. She falls for the man who respects her mind as much as her beauty, who challenges her thoughts without attacking her, who listens like he's trying to understand, not to respond. That man doesn't need to try to be deep, he simply is. And when you become that man, when your life becomes a reflection of discipline, integrity, and emotional mastery, you stop chasing love. You start radiating it, not as a plea, not as a performance, but as a natural byproduct of who you've become. And when that energy meets her, when stillness meets stillness, strength meets strength, silence meets silence, something profound happens. Not fireworks, not drama, alignment. And in that alignment, there are no games, no manipulation, no fear. Just two people whole on their own, choosing each other, not because they need to, but because they want to. And that choice made from a place of strength is the only kind that lasts. She doesn't fall in love with what you say when you're trying to impress her. She falls in love with what you do when you're not trying at all. It's in the small moments. When you tie your shoes without rushing, when you pay the bill without mentioning it, when you walk through a crowded room like you belong there, not because you're loud, but because you're centered. That's where the real signal is, not in your words, but in your rhythm, not in your effort, but in your ease. Because a stoic woman doesn't respond to performance. She responds to presence, to the man who doesn't need her to feel complete, who doesn't look to her for validation like a man starved for water. She wants the one who's already full. The one who gives not because he wants something back, but because generosity is his nature. That kind of man doesn't announce himself. He doesn't wear his confidence like a costume. He simply moves through the world with quiet certainty, and the people around him, especially her, can't help but notice. Not because he demands attention, but because he refuses to chase it. And that refusal, that's what makes him unforgettable. Most men think attraction is about proximity, being around her more, texting daily, showing constant interest. But the truth is, attraction thrives on contrast, on space, on the subtle tension between presence and absence. When you're there, you're fully there, calm, grounded, undistracted. And when you're not, you don't leave a void. You leave a question. Who is this man who doesn't need me to feel strong? That question lingers. It grows. It becomes a silent obsession. Because her mind is drawn to what it can't figure out, to the man who doesn't react the way she expects, who doesn't flinch when she withdraws, who doesn't beg when she's distant, who stays steady, like a mountain in the wind. And the more she tests you, intentionally or not, the more you prove that your value isn't conditional, that you aren't a mirror reflecting her mood, but a force standing on its own. That's when her admiration turns to something deeper, not infatuation. Respect. And respect, once earned, becomes the foundation of real intimacy. Because she doesn't just want someone who makes her feel desired. She wants someone who makes her feel safe. Safe to be quiet, safe to be guarded, safe to take her time. And the only man who can offer that safety is the one who isn't in a hurry. The one who isn't counting days, tracking replies, or measuring how much she likes him. He's beyond that. He's already at peace with himself, with life, with the possibility that she might walk away. And that peace, that's what pulls her in. Not your achievements, not your charm, your unshakability. Because in a world of emotional chaos, a calm man is revolutionary. He doesn't raise his voice to be heard. He doesn't chase to be seen. He simply is. And in his stillness, she finds the rarest thing of all, someone she doesn't have to fix, convince, or manage. Someone who is already whole. And when she realizes that, when she truly sees that you don't need her to complete you, she doesn't just feel attracted. She feels called, not by your words, but by your energy, by the silent invitation to stand beside someone real, someone strong, someone who won't break when life gets hard. And that's not a relationship built on excitement. That's a bond built on truth. And truth, once met, can't be ignored. You don't become the man she wants by changing for her. You become him by refusing to change for anyone, by staying grounded, by leading with silence, by living a life so aligned with your purpose that love doesn't have to be chased, it simply arrives. She doesn't fall because you said the right thing at the right time. She falls because your entire existence speaks a language her soul already knows, the language of stillness, of certainty, of a man who has faced himself and won. Because the truth most men avoid is this: women like her aren't attracted to what you do. They're attracted to what you've overcome. They feel the weight of your discipline, the depth of your silence, the quiet fire behind your eyes, the one that wasn't lit by her presence but by your own struggle. That's what moves her. Not your charm, not your looks, your unbrokenness. The way you carry yourself like you've been through hell and came out with your spine still straight. That kind of strength doesn't need to be announced. It radiates. And when she's near it, something inside her relaxes. Not because you're soft, but because you're solid. And in a world of shifting ground, a man who doesn't waver is a sanctuary. Most men try to impress by showing how much they have, success, confidence, charm. But the man who truly captivates shows how little he needs. He doesn't flaunt his achievements. He lives them quietly. He doesn't talk about his discipline. He embodies it in the way he wakes up early, trains in silence, speaks with purpose, and walks away from drama like it's beneath him. That consistency, day after day, moment after moment, is what builds real attraction. Not spikes of energy, not grand gestures. The slow, steady signal that you are not reactive, that you are not ruled by emotion, that you lead from a place of inner order. And when a stoic woman feels that energy, when she sees a man who isn't shaken by her silence, her tests, her distance, she doesn't just admire him, she trusts him. Not because he promised loyalty, but because he is loyal to himself. And a man who honors his own word, who sticks to his path regardless of who's watching, is the only kind of man worthy of her surrender. Because surrender isn't weakness. It's the highest form of strength. It's the moment she decides deep in her core that she no longer needs to guard herself, that she can be quiet without fear, that she can be slow to open without judgment, that she can finally stop carrying the weight of every interaction. And she only gives that to one kind of man. The one who proves, through action, that he won't misuse it, that he won't take her vulnerability as a sign of availability, that he won't confuse her opening up with a green light to dominate. He respects it, he holds it, he matches it with his own depth. And in that exchange, silent, profound, unspoken, real connection is born, not from words, not from effort, from alignment, from two people who have done the work, who have faced their shadows, who have built themselves from the inside out. And when that happens, there's no chasing, no games, no fear. Just two complete individuals choosing each other, not out of lack, but out of strength. Not because they need to be together, but because they want to. And that choice, made from a place of power, is the only one that lasts. Because love built on need collapses. Love built on wholeness endures. And when you become that man, when your life is no longer about proving anything, but about living your truth, love doesn't come to you, it finds you, quietly, naturally, inevitably, because you've stopped seeking it, and in that stillness you've become irresistible. You don't become the man she can't forget by changing your words, you become him by silencing them, by understanding that the most powerful thing you can do is not speak at all, but simply be, present, grounded, unmoved, because in a world where everyone is shouting, through texts, through social media, through forced smiles and desperate energy, the man who says less doesn't just stand out. He dominates, not with force, not with aggression, but with the quiet authority of someone who knows his worth doesn't depend on being seen. And when she's surrounded by men who beg for her attention with their noise, your silence becomes the loudest thing in the room. It pulls her in not because it's mysterious, but because it's real. Because it signals something rare, a man who isn't afraid of space, who doesn't panic when the conversation slows, who doesn't rush to fill the silence with something meaningless just to feel connected. You let it sit, you breathe through it, you hold your ground, and in that stillness you send the clearest message possible. I am not here to impress you. I am here to be with you, if you choose to meet me where I stand. That's not arrogance, that's integrity. And integrity, when it's lived and not just spoken, is the most magnetic force on earth, because it proves you're not performing, you're not trying to win. You're not measuring her responses to decide how to act next. You're leading from your center. And when a stoic woman feels that, when she realizes you're not reacting to her moods, not bending to her tests, not shrinking when she pulls away, something shifts. Not lust, not curiosity, recognition. She sees in you the man she's been waiting for, not because he's perfect, but because he's consistent. The same today as he was yesterday. The same when she's warm as when she's distant. The same whether she's watching or not. That consistency isn't boring, it's powerful. It's the foundation of trust. And trust isn't built in grand moments. It's built in the small ones. When you don't text back immediately. When you don't chase after silence. When you live your life with purpose, discipline, and quiet strength, regardless of her response. Because the real test isn't how you treat her. It's how you treat yourself when she's not around. Do you still train? Do you still focus? Do you still move forward? Or does your entire energy collapse the moment she's not validating you? Most men fail here. They tie their self-worth to her attention. And when it fades, they scramble. They overtext. They perform. They beg with their timing, their words, their desperation disguised as patience. But you don't react. You don't break. You stay the course. You keep building. You keep growing. You live as if your value was decided long before she arrived, and it was. And when she finally sees that, when she witnesses a man who doesn't need her to feel strong, she doesn't just feel attraction. She feels relief. The deep, quiet relief of meeting someone who isn't asking her to carry him, someone who stands on his own, someone who, for the first time, allows her to lean, not because she has to, but because she wants to. And that's the moment everything changes. Not because you did something dramatic, but because you stopped doing everything wrong. You stopped chasing, you stopped performing, you stopped treating her like the source of your worth. And in that release, you became magnetic, not by trying, but by being. And when you become that man, when your life is no longer about winning her, but about honoring yourself, love doesn't come to you. It finds you quietly, naturally, inevitably, because you've stopped seeking it. And in that stillness, you've become unforgettable. You don't earn her deepest attention by proving you want her. You earn it by proving you can walk away. That single truth, harsh, silent, powerful, is the foundation of real attraction, not need, not effort, freedom. Because the moment you become someone who doesn't depend on her response, you become someone she can't ignore. Not because you're playing games, but because you've stepped into a rare kind of strength, the strength of emotional independence. And that strength doesn't shout. It doesn't boast. It simply is. It's in the way you maintain your routine when she's distant, the way you don't overanalyze her texts, the way you laugh with others without checking if she's watching. That energy, unattached, unshaken, undistracted, is the quiet storm that pulls her in. Not because you're trying to make her jealous, but because you're living a truth most men avoid. Your worth isn't negotiable. It's fixed. And when she sees that, when she realizes you're not orbiting her but moving forward on your own path, something inside her shifts. Not fear, not guilt, curiosity. The kind that doesn't come from flashy words, but from silent contrast. She's used to men who escalate when she pulls back, who panic, who chase, who beg with their timing, their compliments, their sudden intensity. But you don't react. You don't mirror her distance with need. You don't punish her with silence. You simply stay steady. You keep living, you keep growing. And in that stillness, you become unpredictable. Not chaotic, but uncontrollable. And the human mind, especially a sharp stoic mind, is drawn to what it can't predict, what it can't manage, what doesn't respond to its tests. That's when she starts paying real attention, not because you demanded it, but because you stopped needing it. And that's the ultimate power move. Indifference born not from coldness, but from completeness. You're not indifferent to her. You're indifferent to her approval. There's a deep difference. One comes from emptiness, the other from fullness. And when you're full, when your life is built on purpose, discipline, and self-respect, love stops being a pursuit. It becomes a natural outcome, because you're no longer looking for someone to complete you. You're looking for someone to join you. And that changes everything. She doesn't feel pressure. She doesn't feel hunted. She feels invited. And that invitation isn't spoken. It's felt. In the way you hold eye contact without hunger, in the way you touch her arm once and let it go, in the way you leave a conversation without looking back. Each of those moments carries a message. I am here if you choose to be. But my peace does not depend on your answer. And when a woman who's been burned, who's been chased, who's learned to guard her heart, finally hears that silent message, something ancient in her responds. Not fear, not hesitation, relief. The relief of meeting a man who isn't trying to take anything from her, a man who stands beside her, not beneath or above, but equal, grounded, whole. And in that moment, the walls don't come down because you broke them. They soften because she chooses to lower them. And she only chooses that with one kind of man, the one who has already proven through silence and action that he's worth the risk. Not because he promised loyalty, but because he lives it. Not because he said he's strong, but because he doesn't need to. And when you become that man, when your life is no longer about winning love, but about embodying strength, love doesn't come to you. It finds you, quietly, naturally, inevitably, because you've stopped chasing. And in that stillness, you've become undeniable. You don't become unforgettable by trying to be remembered. You become unforgettable by refusing to perform at all, by understanding that the deepest connections aren't built on what you say, but on what you withhold, your need, your desperation, your hunger for her approval. Because the truth most men never face is this: the more you reach, the less she feels. The more you speak, the less she hears. The more you try to prove your worth, the smaller you become in her eyes. But when you stop, when you pause, when you simply exist without agenda, something shifts. Not in her words, not in her actions, in her energy. She starts to lean in, not with her body, but with her awareness. She begins to watch you differently. Not because you've done anything dramatic, but because you've stopped doing what every other man does. You don't flatter. You don't chase. You don't react to her silence with panic. You stay grounded. You keep your rhythm. You live your life like it has meaning beyond her attention. And that, more than any compliment, more than any grand gesture, is what awakens her interest. Because she spent her life surrounded by men who need her to feel important, who look to her to validate their masculinity, their charm, their worth. And you're different. You don't need her to feel strong. You already are. And that quiet confidence, unshaken, unproven, unexplained, is the rarest thing in the world. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't beg to be seen. It simply radiates. And when she's near it, something inside her calms, not because you're soft, but because you're solid, like standing beside a mountain after years of walking through storms. That's what you become, not through effort, but through stillness, not by trying to impress, but by refusing to beg. And the moment she realizes you won't collapse if she pulls away, something powerful happens. She stops testing you. Not because you passed a test, but because the test no longer matters. You've moved beyond it. You're not playing the game. You're living a life so aligned with your purpose that her response, whether warm or distant, doesn't dictate your state. That freedom is intoxicating. Not because it's cold, but because it's real. It's the freedom of a man who has faced himself, who has disciplined his mind, who has trained his body, who has chosen integrity over convenience. And when she sees that, not in words, but in the way you move through the world, she doesn't just feel attraction, she feels recognition, like she's finally met someone who speaks her language, the language of depth, of restraint, of quiet strength. And in that recognition, something begins to unfold, not fast, not loud, but deep. A connection built not on excitement, but on resonance. Not on what you can give each other, but on who you already are. Because love at this level isn't about filling gaps. It's about matching frequencies. It's about two people who have done the inner work, who have faced their shadows, who have built themselves from the inside out, finally meeting, not because they need each other, but because they choose each other. And that choice, made from a place of strength, is the only one that lasts. Because when you stop needing love to feel whole, you become the kind of man love can't resist. Not because you want it, but because you become worthy of it. And when that happens, you don't find love. It finds you. Quietly, naturally, inevitably. You don't command her attention by reaching for it. You command it by not reaching at all. By standing in your truth so completely that the mere presence of your energy shifts the room. Not because you're loud, not because you demand focus, but because you carry yourself like a man who has already decided his worth, long before she arrived, long before she looked, long before she spoke. And that kind of certainty, it doesn't ask for space. It creates it. Because in a world where everyone is performing, the man who is still becomes magnetic. In a world where men beg for attention with their words, their jokes, their desperate charm, the man who says less means more. He doesn't need to prove anything. He doesn't track her responses. He doesn't adjust his behavior based on her mood. He remains steady, grounded, unmoved. And that consistency, quiet, relentless, unwavering, becomes the most powerful force in the room because it signals something rare, a man who is not ruled by emotion, who is not reactive, who leads from a place of inner order. And when a stoic woman feels that energy, when she realizes you aren't trying to win her, aren't measuring her silence, aren't scrambling when she pulls away, something deep inside her relaxes. Not because you're easygoing, but because you're unbreakable. Like standing beside something ancient and solid after years of walking on shifting sand. That's what you become, not through words, but through presence. Not through effort, but through discipline. The kind of discipline that wakes up early without praise, that stays calm under pressure without explanation, that walks away from drama without drama. That kind of man doesn't need to announce his strength. It's in his posture, in his breath, in the way he listens, like he's actually hearing, not just waiting to speak. And when she sees that, when she witnesses a man who doesn't need her to feel complete, she doesn't just admire him. She trusts him, not because he promised loyalty, but because he lives it, in the way he keeps his word when no one's watching, in the way he stays consistent when others would fade, in the way he doesn't punish her with silence when she sets a boundary. That kind of integrity isn't common. It's rare. And rarity creates value, not artificial value, not ego-driven value, real value, the kind that grows over time, that deepens with silence, that doesn't depend on attention to survive. And when she finally recognizes that in you, when she sees a man who isn't trying to be something for her but is already something on his own, she doesn't just feel attraction, she feels safety. Not the safety of comfort, but the safety of strength. The safety of knowing she's standing beside someone who won't collapse when life gets hard, someone who won't disappear when challenged, someone who won't confuse love with control. And that safety, earned, not given, becomes the foundation of real intimacy. Because she doesn't want to be chased, she wants to be matched. She doesn't want to be the strong one, she wants to stand beside strength. And when you become that man, when your life is no longer about proving anything but about living your truth, love doesn't come to you, it finds you. Not in a moment of grand romance, but in the quiet space between two people who have done the work, who have faced themselves, who have built something real. And in that space, there are no games, no manipulation, no fear, just two whole individuals, complete on their own, choosing each other. Not because they need to, but because they want to, and that choice, made from strength, is the only one that lasts. Because love built on need fades. Love built on wholeness endures, and when you stop chasing it, you become the kind of man it can't resist. You don't earn her deepest attention by trying to hold it. You earn it by being the kind of man who doesn't need to, the kind who can walk into a room and not demand focus, yet still commands it. Not because of what he says, but because of the weight he carries in silence. That weight isn't arrogance, it's history. It's the quiet record of every early morning he chose discipline over comfort. Every moment he stayed calm when others would have broken. Every time he walked away from drama, not out of fear, but out of knowing his value is too high to waste on chaos. That kind of man doesn't try to impress. He simply exists. And in his existence, he becomes undeniable. Because a stoic woman doesn't fall for charm, she falls for consistency. For the man whose energy doesn't spike when she's near and crash when she's gone. For the one who treats her the same way he treats himself. With respect, with boundaries, with quiet dignity. That's what moves her. Not your words, not your timing, your integrity, the unshakable alignment between who you are and how you live. Most men think attraction is built through pursuit. But the truth is, real attraction is built through presence, through the way you occupy space without apology, the way you speak only when you mean it, the way you touch, once, deliberate, then let go, like it meant something and then walk away like it didn't. That contrast creates tension, not manipulation, natural, human tension, the kind the mind can't ignore, because the brain is wired to notice what breaks the pattern. And you break it, not by being loud, by being still, not by chasing, by being complete. And when she sees that, when she witnesses a man who isn't trying to win her, who isn't measuring her responses, who isn't adjusting his behavior to keep her interested, she doesn't just feel drawn to you. She feels challenged, not intellectually, emotionally. Because for the first time, she's not the one holding the power. You are, not because you take it, but because you don't need it. And that shifts everything. She's used to men who beg with their eyes, who overtext, who panic when she doesn't reply. Men who make her feel like she holds the key to their confidence. But you don't give her that power. Not because you're cold, because you've already claimed it for yourself. And when a woman who's guarded, who's been let down, who's learned to protect her heart, meets a man who doesn't need her to feel strong, something ancient in her responds, not fear, not resistance. Relief. The deep, quiet relief of finally meeting someone who isn't asking her to fix him. Someone who stands on his own, someone who for once allows her to lean, not because she has to, but because she wants to. And that's the moment real connection begins. Not with a kiss, not with a date, but with a silent understanding you are whole. I am whole. And if we come together, it won't be to complete each other, but to amplify what's already real. That's not romance, that's alignment. And alignment, once felt, can't be unfelt. You don't become the man she can't forget by doing more. You become him by doing less, by speaking slower, by moving with purpose, by leaving first without looking back, by living a life so rooted in discipline, in truth, in self-respect, that love doesn't become a goal. It becomes a byproduct. And when you stop chasing it, when you stop needing it, when you stop measuring your worth by her response, you become the kind of man love can't resist. Not because you want it, but because you become worthy of it. And in that worthiness, you don't find her. She finds you, quietly, naturally, inevitably.